On the line this weekend, a perfect Big Sky season, a conference championship, and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Could the 124th Brawl be the biggest of them all? Welcome to This Week in Big Sky Football. Hello and welcome to This Week in Big Sky Football. I'm Megan Robinson. For the second time in history, the Brawl of the Wild features two teams ranked in the top 5 nationally. The first time it happened 2 seasons ago in Washington Grizzlies Stadium. Montana is hoping that history repeats itself and they can bring the Great Divide Trophy and a Big Sky title back to Missoula. For more on this top 5 matchup and our game of the week, let's welcome in Grizzlies head coach Bobby Hauck. Coach, first and foremost, congratulations on becoming the winningest coach in Big Sky history last weekend. This will be your 12th straight game. We've talked about it a lot. How do you think you've managed 12 weeks in a row of football without a bye now that we've reached the end of that run?
Well, we've done our best to manage that, Meg. 12 straight. We're a little beat up. That's just kind of the way it is. That's what college football at the Division I level is. You get beat up and you fight through it. We've been without numerous players the last few weeks, but our guys have filled in admirably, and we found ways to win. So I like where it sits. I like where we're sitting in terms of where the season is, and certainly we've got a big game this weekend.
We've also talked about the youth on your team and how they've gained experience week after week and they've grown week over week. Which players have stood out to you as far as their growth from week 1 until now?
Well, really, it's kind of our whole defense for the most part because we didn't have any returning starters on defense going into the season. That group in general has played better throughout the season. Our safety, TJ Roush, is playing his best football of his career. He's a fifth-year kid, and he's really played well the last couple of weeks. So that kind of sticks out in my head. And then, we've had some younger guys pressed into service due to injury, and they've held up.
Before we get into Brawl talk, earlier this week, Dylan Botner was named a finalist for the Doris Robinson Scholar Athlete Award. What has he meant to this program, not just on the field, but in the community and in the classroom?
Well, a couple things. One, he's a role model for persistence and love of the game because he's had numerous injuries, both in high school and now in college, and he's kept coming back from those. He's going to medical school. He's got 3 degrees that I can't even pronounce. He's all A's. Again, he's going to medical school, as I mentioned. His perspective on things is you play college football as long as you can until they take your helmet away. And that's what he's done. He deferred his enrollment in medical school for another 6 months just so he could play another year.
Well, hopefully he still has plenty more weeks left playing this season before he has to make that decision. Next game up, of course, is the Brawl of the Wild, your Big Sky best offense versus Montana State Big Sky best defense. Caden Dowler has back-to-back Defensive Player of the Week honors for the Big Sky. How do you limit his playmaking on Saturday?
Block him. That's what you got to do. You got to block him. You got to make him defend you across the width of the field and the depth of the field. That's what we try to do to every defense we play.
You've said this week that you don't think this will be the only time you face the Bobcats this season. What's the secret to making sure your team is focused on this Saturday's game and not looking too far ahead about a potential future matchup?
Well, this is a big game in these parts. It always has been. There won't be any problem with focus on who the opponent is this week. And then I think, generally speaking, our team focuses really well about whoever we're playing on Saturday. So our Week 12 opponent, which is our rival, will get our full attention.
You mentioned earlier you were very impressed with the growth of your defense this season. What challenges does the Montana State offense present your unit?
Well, they run the ball well and control the game on the line of scrimmage, generally speaking. In most games this year, they've been able to do that, and that creates problems for every defense. So again, we need to win on the line of scrimmage in order to have a chance to stop them.
This will be the highest ranked brawl in history. What does this game mean for the state of Montana?
Well, I don't think it matters what the rankings are. I think it's irrelevant in this game. And if neither one of us had a win on the season, this would still be a monster game here, just because it's how it is in Montana between these two schools. And you know, so it's always a big game, and it's a focal point of both programs.
After the break, hear from Montana State head coach Brent Vigen. Welcome back to This Week in Big Sky Football. I'm Megan Robinson. For the last 5 meetings, the home team has won the Brawl of the Wild. Montana State heads to Washington Grizzlies Stadium this weekend, looking to change that. They're also looking to repeat as Big Sky champs. For more on the Bobcats, let's welcome in head coach Brent Vigen. Coach, you secured a top 10 win on Saturday. How do you carry that momentum into this week?
Well, I think it was a really good opportunity for us to be challenged. I think that's the biggest thing. That game against a really good opponent didn't always go our way, but I thought our guys responded really well. Built a 7-point lead by halftime. Came out and won the third quarter and opened that lead up, and then ultimately was able to finish it. So I don't know about momentum out of it, but I think it was really good for us to be challenged.
Caden Dowler arguably had the play of the game with that pick six. What was going through your mind after he intercepted the ball and was returning it to the end zone?
Well, you just, as a coach, you're looking back for flags. I think that's always your first thought, honestly, because those defensive guys don't necessarily know how to block and block legally. Ultimately to take that the whole way, what a game-changing play. You get an 80-plus yard return, and, they're right on the doorstep of being able to put points on the board. Now, all of a sudden, we're up 17 versus looking at the prospect of them cutting into the lead. What a play. And, there's been moments in my tenure that Bobcat Stadium's really been rocking, but that was certainly right up there.
Last week when we spoke, you told me that your guys sort of look at each opportunity every given week, not necessarily the opponent. How does that apply during a rivalry week with the Brawl?
We trust our process, and I know a lot's said about that, but is that how you really truly operate? And if you do, then you can trust that your preparation will be the most important thing. If all of a sudden you're trying to become something different because of the environment and who you play, well, what have you been doing the rest of the games? And our opportunity this season was going to be about how much better could we be in November than we were in September, or even we played the first game at the end of August. And leaning into that mentality has allowed us to continually improve and be at our best at this time of year. And we need to be, to be able to win this game, bring that trophy back with us, to be able to ultimately become Big Sky champs. And then the playoff seeding piece, it doesn't all of a sudden happen because of how you show up one day. I think our guys really have bought into that, and it's allowed us to, again, be a different team now and than we were at the beginning. And that's where we need to be able to do what we want to do on Saturday.
Montana has the Big Sky's leading passer, rusher, and leader in all-purpose yards. What will it take to contain those three on Saturday?
Those three players make them very dangerous. They're certainly led by their quarterback, and he's had a really, really productive year, and it's a big step for that young man. After splitting time last year, so he's the guy that to us really is the first piece that we must stop. And in Gilman, we got to be able to rally to him, tackle him. He's a hard guy to bring down. So that, again, is about being where you're supposed to be. It's about fundamentals for sure. And then in Wortham, we just got to know where he's at all times and, expect the unexpected, I suppose. And again, if the ball's in his hands, he might gain some yards, and that's okay. But how do we keep him from really creating those big time game changing plays?
How do you describe this rivalry to someone like myself who did not grow up watching it on TV?
Well, without professional sports, for sure, in this state or even the surrounding states, this football game and this football rivalry is at the pinnacle of what everybody rallies around. has, again, rooting interest on one side or the other. And I say everybody, I think it is everybody. And for the guys on our team, 44 from the state of Montana, whether it's back in their hometowns or within their families, there's people on both sides, and even a sibling rivalry, you want to be on the right side of that. It's not just something, I guess, at the end that just lives within this week. The game is this week, but then the product of this game is the rest of the year. This game matters to so many people within this state. I would be hard pressed to know that there's a state that has something, that would be at that high a percentage as far as just people vested in the outcome of a football game.
Still to come, we go inside the brawl with Grace Lawrence and Kyle Hansen of Scripps Sports. Welcome back to This Week in Big Sky Football. I'm Megan Robinson, joined now by my friends from Scripps Sports, Kyle Hansen and Grace Lawrence. They will both be on their respective sidelines this weekend for the 124th edition of the Brawl of the Wild. Kyle, I will go to you first because you're in Missoula. This is the first time these two teams are meeting in the Brawl, where both are undefeated in Big Sky play. What are the vibes right now up in Missoula like?
It's exciting. I'm really fired up about it. It's cool because 2 years ago in 2023, these two teams, it was the highest ranked brawl at that time with a 3-4 matchup. Well, then this year we're redoing that with a 2-3 matchup. It just makes it so much fun. We've talked about it before on this, but I grew up in the state of Montana, and this game is just so much different. It's, quintessentially Montana, and everybody here, it just, the community really embraces it and accepts it as their own. And it's just so much excitement. And once the week's finally here, you can definitely feel it. And the week's going to fly by because of it. So we're definitely fired up to get this one going.
Grace, you and I did not grow up in the state of Montana yet. This is the second brawl you'll be covering from the sideline. What have you learned about the importance of this rivalry as you've covered it?
Well, just that it's really, really, really important to everybody in this state. And, we had our weekly press conference with Coach Vigen, and I asked him, you talk about things, like the game and the Michigan, Ohio State, you talk about Auburn, Alabama, all of that. But when people talk about Cat Grizz, they just say, it's just different. And I was like, Coach Vigen, why is it different? And he said, in this modern landscape, there's been some tradition and some pageantry loss. And you have two programs in Montana and Montana State. And all the coaches who come through here that we talk to say, they've got it going. They do it the right way. And it's really cool that they still play it at the end of the year. Everything culminates to it. And I don't think these teams need any extra motivation, but it's normally for a Big Sky championship, maybe for a top 2 seed in the playoffs. And it's really great to know these Montana guys and how much it really means to these guys who grew up and it's their Super Bowl.
Grace, Coach Vigen talks a lot about that want-to-know mentality. He told me his players don't look at necessarily opponent, but more so the opportunity ahead of them. However, you mentioned it, this is for a Big Sky championship. This is for one of those top 2 seeds in the playoff. How are they handling looking internally and not externally at the bigger picture?
Yeah, I've been around this program since 2023, and that playoff loss, that second round playoff loss to North Dakota State when they blocked that extra point, that has really driven this team. You can really date it back to that moment. And I think that last season, the way they were able to rattle off 12 straight wins was that want-to-know mentality, because they said we cannot look ahead of an opponent anymore. I mean, they have a pyramid in their locker room, and at the top of it is win the state, win the sky, and eventually win a national championship. I mean, they're honest that that's what they chase, but I've never been around a team that's obsessed with the process as much as these guys, especially I think about last year, this year. I mean, they really enjoy, conditioning with each other, the 6 a.m. off-season workouts. I mean, they love the process because they want to bear the fruits of their labor at the end of the year.
The big talk, of course, is the number 1 offense in the Big Sky going against the number 1 defense in the Big Sky. We know the key players for both the Grizz and the Cats. Kyle, I will go to you first. Aside from that matchup, what will be the X factor in winning this game?
Well, I think it's going to be the flip side, which is going to be kind of fun to watch, right? Is going to be the Cats offense versus the Grizz defense. And that chess match is going to be really fun to watch, how they handle one another with some new faces on those units as well, playing in the first Brawl of the Wild. The Cats offensive line is always good. They're a very efficient offense. On the flip side, you look at the Grizz defense, quietly a better defense than I think people give them credit for. They see the struggles against the pass, which are definitely warranted, but they give up a lot of yards. But the Grizzlies are still second in the Big Sky in scoring defense behind Montana State. So it's very bend, don't break. It'll be fun to watch how those two units kind of go up against one another, because quietly both of those units are very good.
what I've really loved watching about this offense is just how dynamic they are. It might be the most dynamic offense for this team in years. I mean, Justin Lamson's arm, the way he can throw it, and his plethora of receivers he can throw it to are really phenomenal. And a lot of them have told me how they really feel underrated. They feel the credit is due for how good the defense is on Montana State, but they've been really efficient and they've been really dynamic. And just 2 weeks ago, they put up 66 points on a team. So they want some credit, and they don't mind being the underdogs because they just want to prove everyone wrong.
Coming up, Sam Herder is here to discuss the Big Sky playoff picture. Welcome back to This Week in Big Sky Football. I'm Megan Robinson, joined now by Hero Sports' Sam Herder, an FCS analyst in front of the show. Sam, a lot to be determined this final weekend of the regular season. Big picture, Big Sky. How many teams do you anticipate making that final field of 24 in the playoffs?
Yeah, right now there are 5 teams that still have their playoff hopes alive, and 4 of them face off against each other. And Montana State and Montana, I mean, both of those teams are locks to make it into the playoffs regardless of what happens on Saturday. Then you also have Sacramento State going to UC Davis. I think the winner there is for sure in. And then, the loser, kind of depends on who loses that game. You kind of feel like a 7-win UC Davis team with a head-to-head win over Northern Arizona would have a better argument than a 7-win Sac State team with no ranked wins. But certainly if Sac State wins, then you're kind of looking at, 4 teams, in the playoffs when you factor in the Montana team, Sac State, and then, who that 4th team would be. Would it be between UC Davis, who only has 7 wins, or Northern Arizona, who could have 8 wins, or the committee could put all 5 teams, in this situation. But it seems like 4 is probably the most likely number right now.
You said it. Montana and Montana State are both locks for the playoffs. They're number 2 and 3 in the country, entering Saturday's Brawl of the Wild. However, a lot at stake, a Big Sky title on the line, and also potentially home field advantage through the semifinal round. What are the X factors in winning this game for both teams?
It just seems the home team just jumps on the away team, and then things just kind of avalanche because you're kind of up against it. You're on your heels. The crowd just feeds into it even more. So I think if you're Montana State, you kind of have to ride the waves because I expect it to be a tight ball game, but there's, especially against Montana, a team that seizes momentum so quickly, whether it's a turnover on defense or a sack or a tackle for loss on defense or explosive special teams play. Explosive offensive play. It seems like Montana can seize that momentum so quickly, especially with this year's team. And then you add in the home factor, that's going to play toward Montana in this one. And for the Cats, they kind of need to ride those waves. And for the Grizz, I think they have to win in the trenches here. I think just on paper, what we've seen so far, Montana State has the better offensive line and defensive line. But being at home for Montana, that could be a great equalizer where you're kind of feeding off of that crowd. And if you're a B- level offensive line or defensive line, sometimes that home crowd can get you up to, an A level offensive line just because you can raise your level of play when you're in a game of this magnitude.
All right, Sam, we alluded to it. 4 of the potential Big Sky schools vying for a playoff spot face off this week. First up, UC Davis and Sacramento State in the final Causeway Classic for the foreseeable future. Who do you take winning this game?
Yeah, I'm leaning UC Davis in this one. I know they're really beat up right now. The Davis is coming off of a really physical game as well, going to a Montana State, but I think they have the ability to reload and kind of recalibrate this week, put a good game plan together. So to me, it just seems like Davis is a more complete team, and I think that'll carry them to a win.
Sam, 124th edition of the Brawl of the Wild. The home team has won in each of the last 5 meetings. Will Montana keep this streak alive, or will Montana State make it back-to-back Big Sky titles?
I feel like Montana State is the more complete team than Montana, and has certainly been the more consistent team. For Montana, I will say, when Montana gets going, I think they get going as good as anyone in the FCS. Their defense is flying around, and they can gash you in so many different ways. Ayat has been awesome. I think he's the best quarterback in the Big Sky. Gilman is one of the top, if not the best running backs in the FCS. In a game where there's going to be a lot of momentum swings, it seems like when Montana is riding their momentum at the highest, they're one of the very best teams in the FCS. And you couple that with the home team, I'm kind of leaning Montana right now to get this win.
Awesome, Sam. Well, thank you so much for your insight and enjoy a great slate of Big Sky football this weekend. I do not envy the FCS playoff committee and the decisions they're going to have to make this weekend. Thank you so much for joining me all season long on This Week in Big Sky Football. Once again, I'm Megan Robinson. Enjoy the final Saturday of the regular season.